So today I will be talking about the Soviet-Polish War. So what was the Soviet-Polish War? It was from 1919 to 1921. It took place right after World War I, and it was a battle between the Bolshevik revolutionists and the Polish nationalists. And so this was right after the Russian Civil War, and the Bolshevik nationalists were in favor of communism, and they were the ones who incited a communist revolution in Russia. And their goal was to actually incite a communist revolution all over Europe. And the Polish nationalists, they wanted to get their borders back and their land back from pre-1772. And as you can see on the map, from 1772 to 1775, Poland ceased to exist as a country because Austria, Prussia, and Russia kept on just taking their land until they had nothing left. And then at the end of World War I, Poland was a newly independent country. So this new sense of nationalism, of being a new country, gave them the need for the land that they lost a long time ago. And the Soviet-Polish War was caused because of the aftermath of World War I and the Russian Civil War, and that will be talked about a little later. So, causes of the war. There were three countries that really wanted the war to happen. There was Germany, Russia, and Poland. Germany wanted the war because they wanted Russia and Poland to destroy each other, so they could step in being the largest power and protector in Europe. And the Red Army, again, wanted to incite a communist revolution all over Europe. But to do so, Lenin, who was the leader at the time, saw Poland as like a bridge or a wall between Russia and the rest of Europe. And so to incite a communist revolution across all of Europe, he needed to break that wall down first. And so to start with Poland. And then the Polish chief of state, Joseph Pilsudski, he's pictured on the right here. He wanted to expand the Polish borders to the east and started to move troops in that direction. And to clarify, to the east is towards Russia, and that's where a lot of their land that was lost pre-1772 was. And this led to a fight for land in Eastern Europe. So in November of 1918, Lenin annulled the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which started to move his troops to the west so he could recover the lands that he lost during the treaty. And what was that treaty? Basically, the treaty was done after World War I. It was between Russia and Germany, Austria, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. And when Russia stepped out of the war, they made this treaty, and they lost a lot of land. They lost a bunch of countries, and they also had to recognize the independence of a couple more small countries. And this caused them to lose 1 million square miles of land, and as well as 1/3 of their population. So they wanted this land back. And the rule was that when the war was over, the treaty was annulled. So they were able to go and recover this land. So in 1919, both Poland and Soviet Russia were in Ukraine. They wanted to take over Ukraine's land, and Poland was victorious in the Polish Ukrainian war and had taken most of control of Western Ukraine. And this led to the start of the war. Essentially, the Polish and the Soviet army started to take some cities in Belarus. That's like the beginning fighting ground. And so the Polish took Pinsk, which is down here, as you can see, circled in white. All these cities that I have circled in white on the map are what the Polish took, and then the one circled in red is what the Soviet Union took. So the Soviet army captured Grodno, but they were actually pushed out by a Polish counteroffensive. And so they withdrew and reorganized. And in the meantime, the Polish took Lida, Novogrodek, and Vilnius, and they also captured Minsk, which is the capital of Belarus. Now, the West Ukrainian People's Republic, the most important person from there is Simon Petlura. He wanted to defend and strengthen the Ukrainian People's Republic, and he also wanted to gain more land for them. And so his goal was to create Ukrainian territories on land that wasn't really owned by the Polish or Ukrainian. It was like they both claimed that land. So he wanted to take that land. But then the Bolsheviks started to advance towards those territories, and Petlura couldn't defend against that, so he had to retreat and actually formed an alliance with Pilsudski. And politically, this wasn't really seen as It didn't really do a lot for them politically. A lot of citizens actually on both sides, both in Ukraine and Poland, did not like the idea because of the Polish-Ukrainian War, but he had to do it. And this led to the Kiev Offensive, which was in April of 1920. And it resulted in the takeover of Kiev by both Ukrainian and Polish forces. As you can see on the map, Kiev is in Ukraine. And so they actually did win the Kiev offensives. The Soviet forces withdrew, but they didn't have any major losses, and there wasn't that big of a confrontation. But it's important because it is considered to have officially started the Soviet-Polish War. And the stated goal was to have an independent Ukraine. That's what they said it was. So 15,000 Ukrainian forces did assist the Polish army. And to seal the deal for this offensive, Petlura and Pilsudski signed the Treaty of Warsaw. And the Treaty of Warsaw entailed they agreed to a border along the Zbruch River, and in exchange, Petlura would receive military help to regain Kiev that was taken over by the Russians, and he would also get to be the leader of the Ukrainian People's Republic again. And it did go well for them. In the north, the 12th Soviet Army was destroyed within a week, and then in the south, the Soviet army was pushed out of Ukraine, and then on May 9th, it was captured with very little resistance. And so that did seem like a victory. It would seem that Poland and Ukraine were winning. However, the Soviets ended up pushing the Polish all the way back west in Warsaw, and the Ukraine Directorate fled. And so the Soviet troops were on track to the German border, and their proximity to the German border allowed for a lot of increased attention and involvement in the war from the Western powers. And this is because if you look at the map again, Poland is right between Russia and Germany. And so Germany and other powers started to get worried because Lenin's plan to spread communism throughout Europe was kind of on track to working. And so Germany and the rest of the Western powers started to pay attention to a war that didn't involve them because it could eventually involve them. And it worried them. In midsummer, it looked as if Warsaw would fall, but the Polish had an unexpected victory at the Battle of Warsaw. And both sides had plans on how they were going to handle this. Lenin used the plan of inciting a communist revolution. So he wanted to incite that in Poland. He planned that as the Russian army approached, the Polish communists, which actually did exist, even though Poland was not a communist country, they would incite a revolution among the working class. And the whole group of them, the working class, the Polish communists, they would welcome the Red Army as liberators. He planned for this pattern to be followed in Germany and then and beyond. And initially, everything went well. 6 weeks later, they were at the gates of Warsaw. However, the plan didn't work as he expected because the working class, did not revolt against the Polish government like he intended them to. And so the Polish had a counterattack idea for this. And as you can see, I put up a little diagram on the right of what this kind of looks like. So Pilsudski drew up this bold and risky counterattack plan to get the Red Army away from Warsaw. Basically, the Polish and the Red Army would meet face on right here. But then the Polish army would proceed to flank the Soviets from both sides, and it would basically encircle them. And this actually did work. He was successful and ended up sending the Red Army into complete chaos. So the Red Army disintegrated and fled. And this was actually a huge win for the Polish because it caused the Red Army to surrender because of the amount of losses they experienced during this, and the war was actually won by the Polish, which led to the Treaty of Riga. This is what officially ended the Soviet-Polish War. So, in the terms, Poland gained new land, parts of Belarusia, which is now Belarus, and Ukraine. And as you can see, I put in this map here with this blue line. This is called the Curzon line, and basically it was a proposed boundary between Poland and Russia after World War I. However, during this war, Poland actually had gained territory 250 kilometers east of that line. And so they actually took all of that land, even though not all of the European countries wanted them to do this. So they did take a lot of the land, but then they ended up actually losing most of it and during World War II, and Russia took it back. So today, the Curzon line is about the line, roughly the line between Poland and Russia. And then Soviet Russia could not meddle in the quarrel of Lithuania, meddle in the quarrel between Lithuania and Polis over Vilnius, which I'll talk about in the next slide. And Poland would have to officially recognize Soviet Ukraine and Soviet Belarus as Soviet countries. And Poland could not support Petliura anymore, who was now the head of Ukraine. And the treaty ensured that Poland would become a national state and also stabilized Eastern Europe after World War I. So the aftermath, talking about Vilnius, so it was in contention because both Poland and Lithuania wanted it. And the League of Nations arranged for Vilnius to be put under Lithuanian control. This was in contention because after World War I, it was passed back and forth between Poland and Lithuania, and because both countries wanted it. However, the Polish were not happy that the League of Nations did this and decided to take matters into their own hands. And so the Polish troops came in and claimed Vilnius as their central government and annexed it in 1922. And that's a claim that Lithuania never accepted. And as you can see, as I wrote down here, Vilnius is still the capital of Lithuania today. So it's not like there's a dispute, I guess you could say, over still over Vilnius today. And the war also took a big toll on the Soviets, especially in the Battle of Warsaw. Like I said, the Polish ended up capturing 66,000 prisoners of war. And the Red Army actually lost a lot more soldiers because a lot of them fled to surrounding countries like East Prussia and Lithuania. And they also captured a lot of Soviet technology. Now, the lasting effects of the Polish-Soviet War, the war influenced the military tactics that the Polish would eventually use in World War II. It showed them the importance of mobility, maneuver, and mechanization. The war also ensured independence for many Eastern European countries for almost 20 years and deterred a Russian revolution into communist takeover. And this is because, as Lenin hypothesized, Russia and Germany are separated by Poland, which is a wall. And if he had actually won, let's say that the Soviet army had won this war, they would have been able to reach Germany. They could have incited a communist revolution, and then that could have had a domino effect across Europe and incited communist revolutions everywhere. So it's kind of iffy what would have happened, but that is a very big possibility. So it did deter a communist takeover, which is, yeah. And then it also allowed for the Polish capture of Vilnius, which led to bad diplomatic relations between Lithuania and Poland for the next couple decades over that. These are my citations. Thank you.